Ajay.
It's a wonderful pleasure from the side of both West Bengal Academy of Science and Technology and Jadavpur University to have a program on energy, which is always been the holy grail, and have no one else than Dr. Ajay Mathur illuminate us on this ever interesting aspect of energy in this country. Um, we also have uh, other dignitaries here in this, and may I call upon the stage for this program Professor Sudipto De, Professor Amitabh Datta, our Pro Vice Chancellor, the Speaker of the Day, Dr. Ajay Mathur, and our guest of honor, Mr. Dev Mukhopadhyay. Thank you. Um, may I request Professor Amitabh Datta to felicitate Dr. Ajay Mathur with a bouquet of flowers. And I would also like to request Professor Sudipto De to felicitate Mr. Dev Mukherjee. So, on behalf of the West Bengal Academy of Science and Technology, I'd regret to say you that the president of West Bengal Academy of Science and Technology, Professor Shivaji Chakraborty, couldn't be here for some urgent personal work, rather family emergency. So, on behalf of was I'd like to request Professor Amitava Datto to welcome the audience.
Academy of Science and Technology to have Dr. Ajay Mathur, who is such an esteemed illuminary in the area of energy, to be here with us on this occasion. I welcome Dr. Mathur in this program. I also welcome Dr. Dev Mukherjee, who, in spite of his busy schedule, has given us time, and also all the participants and dignitaries who are there present here to attend this very important and interesting lecture from Dr. Mathur. Dr. Mathur was supposed to visit us earlier, but because of some problem from his side, he could not attend that program on the day. We are very happy that he has given us time again and has come here in Kolkata to deliver this lecture to all the students, scholars, and faculty members of Jadavpur universities and other guests. It is always such a pleasure to hear Dr. Mathur on any topic related to energy. He is working in the field for such a long period and has such a checkered career and experience in the area of energy. Presently, he is the Director General of International Solar Alliance. So I am sure that he will illuminate us on the energy transition and transition in the electricity sector that is happening in our country. The electric industry in India has grown tremendously over the last 2 decades, and presently we are nearing about 500 gigawatt of electricity installation in our country. There is a shift over the last few years from fossil fuel based electricity generation towards renewable based electricity generation, particularly from solar. But again, people are also thinking towards other areas whether nuclear should also come up equally strongly to deliver the electricity need of our country. As we are developing in the industrial sector, we aspire to become one of the largest economy of the world. uh, the need for electricity will grow up tremendously in the coming year. Though the per capita electricity consumption has increased significantly over the last few years, but still we are, I think, about a third of the world average. So there is enough opportunity to grow in the coming days. And how that demand will be met, I'm sure that Professor Dr. Mathur will tell us his views and the future of the electricity industry in his lecture today. We will hear from Dr. Mathur on electricity transition in India and issues of land, lines, and money. These are all very important aspects. We look forward to hear from him on these issues, and I'm sure that the entire audience, particularly our students and scholars, will be much benefited from the lecture that he will be delivering today. Thank you once again, Dr. Mathur, for your presence and for giving us time despite your very, very busy schedule. We all know that. And thank you once again, and thanks everyone.
Thank you very much, sir. I'd like to request Professor Sudipto De to introduce to us our guest of honor, Mr. Dev Mukherjee. Sudipto Da.
In fact, it's my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Dev Mukherjee. I must say that the academia industry collaboration passion I found from him, and where I rather could venture to involve senior persons like Dr. Ajay Mathur to bring to our Jadavpur University. And we did together many work, including the international collaborations. He was very eager to travel with us, and even the chamber meeting abroad we could do. So, I mean, I believe that Mr. Mukherjee and me are very good friend, and rather my mentor also in one sense of developing this academia industry collaboration. But this is my formality now to introduce Mr. Deve Mukherjee, who is very much supportive. And in fact, this program would not be possible without his wholehearted support in all sense. So Mr. Mukherjee is by qualification a lawyer. He has been a serial entrepreneur with over 40 years work experience in diverse business domains. For last 20 years has worked in energy, water and sustainability services business and was executive chairman of IGA India. Currently, he is managing director of Synergist India. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of Enerqua Technologies UK, Green Economy Market Service Company, and also is an inward investor in the UK. Served as president of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry in the year 2020-21. And what I just mentioned at the beginning, he has passion for academia industry collaborations, and I am very proud to inform you that we have jointly edited one international publications edited book of Springer. He has strongly advocated and promoted industry academia partnership in India and the UK and has served on the editorial board of Springer publication Sustainable Energy Technology and Policies, a Transformational Journey. So I'm really very happy that Mr. Mukherjee is also here as our guest of honor. And then I think that to introduce Dr. Mathur, there is no other person suitable, at least on the stage, Mr. Devi Mukherjee. So I request Mr. Mukherjee to introduce Dr. Mathur to the audience.
Thank you so much, Sudipto. You have really put the context. Well, thank you very much for your very kind introduction to begin with. It's always a pleasure, and of course, it's my privilege to introduce an iconic person like Dr. Ajay Mathur to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Here is a person who has, in every sense of the term, traversed the entire spectrum. We are talking about sustainability and sustainable services, the entire spectrum of sustainability, whether it be climate change, whether it be energy transition, whether it be resource efficiency, or any other aspect of sustainability in various capacities, and that too in various roles. In other words, he has served in the industry, he has served within institutional framework, he has served within the government, he has served in international alliances. So right through the spectrum, he has delivered value to the community, to the global community. Right from the time, the early days when he was in the World Bank for a good 10 years in Washington, D.C., back to India as president of Suzlon Energy when he was in the commercial world. Then, of course, the glorious 10 years that he served as the Director General of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. And you would all agree with me that today, energy efficiency, demand-side energy management, this has come to India because of Dr. Ajay Mathur. As simple as that. And today, we see the benefits. Today, we see the benefits of that. From there, he went on to the Energy and Resources Institute, TERI, where he served as the Director General for a good few years, I think 3 or 4 years, 5 years, and after which, handpicked by our Prime Minister to head the International Solar Alliance. And you can see the difference he has made to the solar scenario globally. So here is a person who has checkered right through the spectrum of sustainability services in all the roles that he has performed. What is particularly important for us to note is that when we talk about energy transition or we talk about renewable energy, Paris Agreement COP21 was a very, very important milestone, and it formed the bedrock, so to speak, of the subsequent COPs and the dialogues at the international level on climate change and for what we now call as net zero targets. Who was the person who negotiated for India and who was our spokesperson at COP21? It was Dr. Ajay Mathur. So Ajay Mathur's contribution at COP21 made all the difference, and we can see the benefits being reaped, although it's happening at not a desirable pace, but certainly it's happening. Even at Baku, he has just returned from COP29, but things are happening. People are conscious of it. But this is all about Dr. Ajay Mathur's professional side of things. But you will please allow me to bring about another dimension to his personality. I have known Dr. Mathur for, I think, about 20 years now, at least for the last 2 decades, ever since he came back to India. Here is one person who, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, I was asked, like similar to this sort of occasion, where I was asked to introduce Dr. Mathur to the audience. And I was racking my brain, how do I introduce this gentleman? And everybody reads a bio note and all his achievements. But what about the person? What sort of a person is he? And then what came to my mind, I'm going to share that with you. He is, in simple terms, a perfect gentleman with a beautiful mind. This is what describes Dr. Ajay Mathur. I have always seen him generate positive energy, never says anything ill about anybody, always very friendly, always approachable, always willing to talk and discuss, and always has a fresh perspective on any issue, on any challenge, on any problem. Firmly grounded to the ground realities, with a visionary mind, and with a very sharp intellect. He is a person who has made all the difference. It's indeed all our good fortune that today he is going to deliver a talk on a very, very important subject as the electricity transition in India. And I'm sure we are all looking forward to hearing him. So I'm not going to take any more of your time. But again, indeed an honor for me to introduce Dr. Ajay Mathur and present him to you, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, obviously, we will also go to the front to listen to him. And now the stage is for Dr. Mathur. They will just simply arrange a little bit. They will provide you and arrange the stage also.
So where is the camera?
The camera is here.
Okay.
So,
So I have to be in front of this.
yeah, preferably, but if you want to roam around and come back, that's also fine. The pointer is here. So this is move forward and reverse, and this one is for the pointer.
ওডিয়া মাইকটা বন্ধ করুন ওডিয়া মাইকটা সুইচ হ্যাঁ স্যারকে বলতে বল
হ্যাঁ
কন্ট্রোলে বল
চল ডান
ঘুরিয়ে দাও সরিয়ে
Oops. I think it's okay.
Stage is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I want to thank Jadavpur University and in particular the Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Sudipta Day and Mr. Dev Mukherjee for making this possible. I also want to thank you all for coming here. As was said earlier, I was supposed to be here on the 2nd of August. I lost my sister on the 1st of August and so could not be here on the 2nd. And I'm delighted. I'm very grateful to the West Bengal Academy of Science and Technology and Jadavpur University for accommodating me here. I am personally extremely worried about Professor Sivaji Chakrabarti and his daughter's health and hope that everything will turn out to be fine. I wanted to spend maybe 45 minutes or so in talking to you about the electricity transition that is happening in India and the issues that come out of this transition. And there are three issues which I think are particularly important, which are that of the land where we will install the solar panels and the wind panels and the batteries, the transmission lines that connect these places where we do the generation from solar, wind, and batteries to the load centers or to the transmission lines, and the issue of the investment money. Because as you will see, it is much cheaper now, not much cheaper, it is cheaper now to invest in renewable energy to get electricity rather than in fossil fuels. But what it implies is that these three issues of land, of transmission lines, and of the investment money are taken care of as we try to scale up. However, to begin with, what I'd like to focus on is the fact that we have had a phenomenal growth in solar technology in general, but renewables in overall. Much of it has happened because of the huge decline in prices of both solar electricity and of the battery prices. The first graph on the right that you see is that of the price of electricity that we get from solar when the sun is shining. But the sun is not shining all the time. We have, for example, in this country, a demand for electricity which is growing at about 5% a year. Mr. Dev Mukherjee mentioned the fact that we have had a relatively good energy efficiency growth in this country. If the energy efficiency growth had not happened, then purely the demand because of the additional air conditioners would have meant that this would have been growing at about 7% a year instead of 5%. But the fact that the demand is increasing means that we have to add new capacity which meets our needs, increasing needs in the day and at night. During the day, you can add solar. But what the generation companies come and tell me is, would you want us to add solar to provide electricity during the day and then add coal to provide electricity during the night? That does not make sense. Because we can use that coal during the night, but we can also use it during the day. They're absolutely right. Because unlike the developed countries where the per capita consumption of electricity per person is not really changing, it is changing, but not very much. Nowhere near where ours are. There you can use solar electricity during the day, and the existing fossil fuel capacity can be used at night. Or rather, by fossil fuel capacity, it could be hydro, it could be nuclear, it could be gas, it could be coal, any existing capacity. But the point is, they do not have to think in terms of adding capacity to meet the growing demand during night. This is the reason why it is very important for us to invest in battery research, in lowering the cost of batteries, because while the cheapest electricity that you will find today when the sun is shining is from solar. And we've got electricity at about what? I think the lowest price we've gone to is about 2 rupees per kilowatt hour. But generally speaking, it's about 2.4 rupees per kilowatt hour. But I repeat those words, it's only when the sun is shining. You need capacity to be able to store that electricity produced when the sun is shining to be used when it is not. That means at night, which means that the magic is that somehow the solar plus electricity cost has to match the cost of round the clock RTC. It's a word you'll hear very often. It has to meet the RTC cost of electricity from fossil fuels. The RTC of fossil fuels right now, uh, we'll come to this in a little time, but right now it's about 5 rupees per unit. So that's the goal that we have to reach to. We have already crossed 90 gigawatts of solar electricity in India. When I was making this presentation, it was about 70 gigawatts or 85.4. It's already crossed 90, and it'll, before the year is over, it'll probably cross 100. This is stunning progress. And what has it achieved? What it has achieved is that when you look at renewable electricity together with batteries, not batteries alone, when you look at renewables and batteries together, you find that the price of round the clock electricity produced by solar and wind and batteries. Why do you do the three? Because solar and wind are cheaper. And together you're able to get electricity for about 17 to 18 of the 24 hours. So your battery sizing is minimized. So when you do solar and wind and battery, we have been able to get prices in the vicinity of 4.1 to 4.99 rupees per kilowatt hour. That's what you see on the lower graph there. This means that we are now able to compete with new coal-based power plants, which are being commissioned now. And we see prices in excess of 5 rupees per kilowatt hour for them. So the repeating success at tenders of solar plus wind plus batteries, or let me call it as renewable electricity round the clock, RERTC. The fact that you get renewable electricity round the clock at prices which are less than or competitive with new coal-based power stations essentially means that bankers will now ask us, if we want to set up a coal power station, excuse me, why do you want to go with something which is more expensive? And over time, price decreases. The other thing which happens is, as you will see in the small print at the bottom, that the first two prices, the lower prices, are for 75% availability and or 85%, and then the last two are for 90% availability. Coal power stations typically work at something of the order of 75% availability, which means that we will need other sources to meet the deficit, because you need to meet that either the 10% or the 25% somehow. We have got adequate hydro capacity, we've got adequate nuclear capacity to be able to meet this demand. In my view, therefore, reaching the 500 gigawatt level of renewables by 2030, which is what the Prime Minister promised in his modified nationally determined contributions, which India put up at Glasgow, I don't think that will be particularly difficult. I think we will do much more than the 500 gigawatts. The point that I'd like to leave with you is that we have crossed an economic barrier. The economic barrier of how you get the cheapest electricity. Now this leads to far greater issues of how do we upscale it. Upscaling is a real issue. Well, or is it? If you look at the price of existing coal plants, this is so coal plants in India, we buy electricity from them at what is known as a two-part tariff. One part of the tariff is a fixed cost, which is the cost that it takes to invest in the plant. And the second is the price of coal. So when a state government or a distribution company signs an agreement with with the electricity generating plant, they commit to pay the fixed cost. So the plant is very comfortable because they know that they will get a return on which they can pay back the loan that they took. But the second part is the variable cost. The variable cost is the cost of coal, as I said. Essentially, it's a little more than that, but it's largely the cost of coal. This is if you buy the electricity. If you buy the electricity, you pay this. The first part you have to pay anyway. So what we did was we compared the variable cost. That means you can choose to pay the fixed cost. Only the variable cost is the capital cost. The part tariff is, let me say, a sunk cost. You have to pay it anyway. Let us compare the cost of solar with, let us compare the cost of round the clock renewable electricity with the cost of the variable cost, only the variable cost of coal-based power. What this graph shows you is the price of the variable cost of power for different amounts of electricity that we get from coal. The total amount of electricity that we get from coal is something of the order of approximately something of the order of about 200 gigawatts. And the key issue to be noticed here is that of those 200 gigawatts, 41 gigawatts has a price of more than 4 rupees per kilowatt hour. You saw in the previous graph that the price of round the clock renewable electricity was in the range of 4 to 5 rupees. In other words, at this place, the first thing that you can do is not buy electricity from coal-based power stations, at least those which have a fixed, have a variable cost of more than 4 or 4.5 rupees per kilowatt hour, and instead buy from solar. That alone would mean that 41 gigawatts of solar energy or solar plus wind plus battery energy could be bought. That's the first part. This electricity, this solar plus wind plus storage electricity being cheaper could also mean that it goes into the production of what is known as green hydrogen. Because green hydrogen really, how do you make green hydrogen? You essentially make it by using electricity which is from renewables, green electricity, and put it in an electrolyzer where water is fed on one end and hydrogen and oxygen come out at the other end. We need green electricity for an electrolyzer to work. And as you know, electrolyzer costs a lot of money. And therefore, the larger the amount of time for which you can use it, the better it is. So if you've got green electricity available 100% of the time, you can use the electrolyzer for 100% of the time. So the low cost of renewable electricity, round the clock renewable electricity, means that we can effectively make cheaper green hydrogen. Now, let me come to the problems as we look into the future. One of the things that I want to focus on is that as we look at upscaling, the 4 successful auctions that we have had, we don't want to stay at 4. We wanted to go to 400. We want to go to 4,000. The first issue that comes up is, okay, where do I put this up? Is there enough land? You live in West Bengal, which is one of the most densely populated parts of the country. Nevertheless, there are options. And options, for example, could be on top of the reservoirs, the hundreds of reservoirs that are present in this country, in this state. But in many other states, there is adequate land. For example, we made a calculation that if 90%, not even 100%, if 90% of the Thar desert alone was used, it could meet all our energy needs by 2070. But we have much more land. What we need is for the government to enable this land to be passed on to private sector developers who win various auctions and tenders. So, for example, the government of Gujarat has taken a piece of land which is on the India-Pakistan border in a place called Khavda and converted it into a park where solar or wind or storage could be set up. How could they do this? Well, in this particular case, that particular land in the run of Kutch has almost not completely zero, but almost zero value. So they could acquire it relatively cheaply, and in turn they sell it to people who want to come and do it. Right now, I think it's the Adanis and Suzlon and NTPC who have been allocated various portions of land in that. But this can be done everywhere. I'm speaking in West Bengal, so I want to make sure that I make it very clear that I don't want Singaroors to happen. But what is possible is to look at the kind of options that, for example, we used in Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, initially, when we used to put up a wind turbine, we used to buy a huge patch of land. But then people, the farmers, started asking us, why do you want to buy the huge piece of land? You buy only the land on which the wind turbine is based and the roads which go from one of these to another. We can still farm in the rest. It made great sense to us in the renewable energy business because now you are buying approximately 1/5 of the land that you were earlier, because there is 7 times distance between wind towers. So there's a huge amount of so the 7 times the length is the distance between wind towers. So there's a huge amount of empty space. But then the farmers got even more interested and said, listen, why do you pay us upfront? Why don't you pay us a lease every month, which is some fraction of what you earn by electricity sales? So the farmers started leasing out land and getting an annual income. My suggestion to state governments is lease land from farmers and make those leases available to the private sector developers. So the private sector developers pay, but the big amount of land is collected through government effort. I will argue that for many farmers, getting a fixed income stream is far better than facing the vagaries of the production that occurs both because of climate and because of the reducing land size that occurs across succeeding generations. In other words, I believe that every state needs to make this happen. Right now, we work in a regime in which power is transferred from one state to the other without incurring interstate transmission charges, as it's called. But this situation cannot occur forever. I would like us to be able to put up solar plus wind plus battery farms closest to the load centers as is possible, which means that lands must be available in all the states for me to put it up. And therefore, if I win an auction, I can go to the nearest state government where adequate land is possible and then see at what conditions do I buy it. If the conditions are too expensive, I might as well do it as I do now by investing in Gujarat or investing in Karnataka or investing in Tamil Nadu, where there are places for large farms to be set up. If I find that it is cheaper to do it in, for example, West Bengal or, for example, in Haryana, that's what I'll do. The central point I want to leave with you is that this country has enough land. We need to enable this land to be used for solar purposes through mechanisms which make sure that the user of the land does not suffer. In fact, he gains from the electricity production. The second point that I would like to emphasize is the issue of transmission lines. You see, transmission lines typically take what, about 3 years to make. This was okay because in the earlier regime, if you wanted to make a coal power plant, it would be about 45 to 48 months that it will take. So it was longer than the 36 months it will take for the transmission lines to build. But solar and other renewable energy projects get done in 2 years. And transmission lines takes 3 years. So you may have a solar project ready for operation, in fact, producing electricity, but no means to be able to evacuate it. As a result, transmission plans today are made on the basis of ad hoc decisions by private sector investors to the places where they go to do the plants. Now, one of the big advantages of having these lots of land in different states is that then we can plan on building transmission lines from that area to the nearest place where the high tension grid is there or where the load center is there. I'll give you an example. Gujarat made Khevda. Now, Khevda is now connected through transmission lines to the high tension transmission line. So if you go there, or if you go to the Karnataka center, or if you go to the Rajasthan center, in all of these places, you've got the transmission lines which are already there. It makes great sense, therefore, to be able to plug and play in a place where the land is available, where the transmission facilities are also available. I would argue that it is possible to look at it in a forward-looking manner so that we have both land and transmission lines available as we set up this large amount of solar plus wind plus storage that we plan, that we can do as cost effectively to move ahead. The last issue I would like to discuss is that of money. You know, about 100 megawatts of coal-based capacity will cost somewhere in the vicinity of 900 crores. A little less, but somewhere in the vicinity of about 900 crores. If I want to do something similar in terms of solar and wind and storage, I'd have to do 170 megawatts of solar, not 100, 170 megawatts of solar, 135 megawatts of wind, and 100 megawatts of storage capacity, or 100 megawatts or 192 megawatt hours of a storage capacity, which meets the same kind of electricity that is produced by the coal power station round the clock. The total investment in all of these three things combined at today's prices comes to about 1900 crores. 900 crores versus 1900 crores. Though in the case of coal or gas or diesel plants, you have to pay additional money to get the coal or oil or gas. That is why their price increases. That is why the price of electricity from solar plus wind plus storage is less. 5 rupees per kilowatt hour or less is less than that from coal, 5 rupees per kilowatt hour or more. But you need this upfront money. Either you can have double the amount of money that you invest. Now, we invest something of the order of 15% of our total investable money goes into the electricity sector every year. Increasing it to 30% is not out of the question. As a country, we can do it. But the problem is that the other sectors will start feeling the impact. You can almost hear a sucking sound coming out of the other sectors as you think of this. How can we make this possible? Well, one way, and I emphasize this is one way, I'm not an economist, but I am suggesting this mechanism. One way is to increase the velocity of the investment money. How can we do that? Typically, the loans today are provided for 5 to 7 years. Supposing we half that to 3 years, so that the developer has access to this money when the construction is happening in the first 2 years, and there is 1 year in which there is a chance to see how much repayment that you get. Why? Because at the end of the third year, I would like the developer to return this investment loan and instead put in buy bonds. It's my retirement money and yours. Today, our retirement monies are essentially paid by the sale of equity. So somebody will say, okay, I will give you a pension. And what they do is they buy a lot of shares and they sell a certain amount of shares every year and pay you a certain amount. What instead we can do is have a platform on which bonds are created. And these bonds provide money to specific developers and get a return from them based on the electricity they sell. So people like me pay their retirement money into this bond. It gets an annual return, which I like, but it also allows that company to get money instead of the investment money that he got. So the investment money is changed by bond money. That investment money can then go in making another solar plus wind plus electricity plus storage power in the next 3 years. So you use the money twice in the same period as you did the first time. In other words, it is possible. As I said earlier, this is only one suggestion. I'm sure there'll be many other suggestions. But as we look forward, we need to find ways in which we can get this land in place, we can get the transmission lines in place, and we can get the investment money in place. I'd like to leave you with the thought that number one, cheaper, round the clock renewable electricity is now available, cheaper than coal, new coal plants. Number two, upscaling it to a national level would require us to focus on the availability of land, on the availability of transmission lines, and on the availability of investment money. And I believe that all three of those are possible. That's where we need to focus our attention now. I thank you for your attention and would be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
হ্যান্ড মাইকটা দাও।
Thank you, I think as usual, it has been excellent. Particularly in so short a time, even with the help of a few slides, you have mentioned the problem and the answers to the problem for a lot of points that come up. First, I have your question, but answer it, I'm sure it will be quite short. You mentioned that long ago when you were in PE and if the efficiency has not, the energy efficiency has not got up to the extent that everybody is, then the responsibility is mostly there. I was in China at that time, and not at that time, but some time, and they were complaining very much about it. The government of China has decided that no one will maintain air conditioning plant, which is less than 24 or 25 degrees.
Right.
We have never tried to do that in our country, which will save a lot of money. The second point is that your argument about the only thing is it possible to do this co-location in all the places? The last one is learn very much about what we talk about from anti-solar. Why it requires a lot of land? Well, that's true, it requires a lot of land. But having all over the world, like in India, we have very little non-crop land, very little. Some land and two crop, three crop land. There will be tremendous objection everywhere if you give it for
Yeah.
solar panel. And another thing is water.
Mhm.
That's a technical possibility of water, making water less. We are fortunate in West Bengal, no problem with water, but there are people, South India and others, they have tremendous problem of water. These two are slight details, I think, when you talk about solar.
Thank you very much, sir. Can I request a few more questions and then I'll try to answer you to the best of my ability.
Sir, first thing that I recognize my question is two sides of it. One is that the balancing power for the solar uh, is given by the reliable power generators like coal, hydro, and to that extent nuclear will be minuscule factor. Now, the more you focus on the solar, the more balancing power is required. So generally, the cost cannot be uniform at that stage because the storage cost maybe it is electrical or mechanical or pump storage or whatever it is, the cost is bound to rise. So what do you think about the rising cost if we focus only solar, wind and battery to replace the reliable power generation from thermal, or to that extent, the second question comes, is government is focusing more on the nuclear part because nuclear has got its own disadvantages of safety scenarios in the societal aspects of it. So, and hydro being also a reliable power generator, but then again, the rehabilitation, societal issues, that high gestation periods might come in. So, what is your thought process that to keep the power affordable also, there is a balance balancing requirement between the reliable power generators and the renewable side of it. And to that extent, why India is not harnessing any opportunities in the CSP, which probably has got certain reserve in the heat energy for the night cycle. These are the two questions.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Mathur, thank you for your kind talk. I would like to know two questions. One is, what are the hazards that may come
Mhm.
in renewable energy?
Mhm.
And now two, we have heard that there are huge resources of lithium. Is it also have some impact in the money or rate of electricity in near future?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Two small questions. What is the potential in India to get solar power from the train top, and also how much we can get from the airport side? I know India has got lots of airports. We have got lots of power plants and solar in airports. So how much we can get extra for now?
Mhm.
Potential in India from railway, train top, and airports. Thank you.
I will try to answer these questions and we can take another round after that. Aluka, you have asked very difficult questions. Why don't we have a requirement for electricity generation standards? While we never had generation standards announced, the fact was that, okay, there was a particular reason for it because in about 2010, 2012, 2014, we moved to a system where it is the electricity rate which matters. And if the generator wants to make the maximum money, he will use a very efficient plant so that he is able to get the largest margin on the money that he has quoted. Before this happened, yes, there were about 5 or 6 years in which all kinds of inefficient plants did come in. But before that, what did happen was that before the Electricity Act 2003 came into force, before that, every coal plant was approved by the Central Electricity Authority. And they would look at the efficiency. And in their minds, the minimum efficiency was 28%. So if there was anything less than 28%, they would not approve it. So yes, there was a transition period in between in which we got a lot of inefficient plant as well. But I think by far and large, the plants, the coal-based plants that we have are in the 30% efficiency. I mean, we looked at the efficiency of those plants and we found it to be 30% plus. The issue that you raised of co-location, that's a very difficult question to answer because co-location you can get in certain places. So, for example, the reason why the Gujarat or the Rajasthan or the Tamil Nadu or the Karnataka sites gel is because you've got good solar and good wind. Battery you can put almost anywhere. However, I think it is at the end of the day a call of the private sector developer as to where he thinks the best possibility is. So for, you know, I speak as a planner, and for me, if solar and wind and battery are all at the same place, then the transmission line that comes works at 90% capacity utilization factor. If I've got them at three different places, then I've got three transmission lines, each one working at a 30% capacity utilization factor. So I have a problem. Now, however, as I said, whether it is a matter of location or it is a matter of how many of these things you do together will depend on the price that the person quotes in the auction. Uh, I have a feeling, this is purely a personal feeling, I'm putting a straw man in front of me. I expect that in the near future, what we will see are places where co-location of solar and wind and battery is possible. But in the longer term, we'll start seeing solar and batteries or only wind and batteries coming up as well. So what you will see, by that time, the prices would also have declined. So it will become cost competitive to focus on only solar and batteries or only wind and batteries. So that's a partial answer. I'm not very sure whether this will happen or not. You talked also about water availability. Now, the biggest problem of not having water is not having water to clean the modules. What we have seen is that in the recent past, we have seen many technologies come up which are looking at cleaning modules in India without water, dry, using, say, a spinning cloth to clean them. Uh, One of the things that we have done recently, the International Solar Alliance, is that we did a competition to get to recognize the solar startups. And it was very interesting that, so we did it in Africa, we did it in Asia Pacific, including India, we're going to do it in Latin America. So it was very interesting that in India, we saw this technology coming up in which people had put robotic arms, and the robots would clean the entire row and then go to the next row and so on. I expect that the water dependence in the future will be far less than it is right now. But again, this is crystal ball gazing. Uh, Anybody's guess on how we will go ahead. There was a question about balancing power. This is actually the reason why you see this here. Oops. Yeah. Oops. Yeah. Why am I? Now I've switched it off completely. Huh. Can we somehow make this possible? From here? Okay. The point I wanted to make was that there is a cost of balancing. When you are able to do the previous one, previous, yeah. When you do the balancing at 75%, then you are able to get prices of 4.1 to 4.34. When you do balancing at 90%, you are able to get prices of 4.67 to 4.99. This is no, I mean, why? Because you need more battery for more time. The point is, even at this price, they're cheaper than coal-based electricity. Now, nevertheless, when you go to 100%, it means that the prices go up to about 7 rupees a unit from the 5 rupees a unit. So the 10% difference increases the price dramatically. What it means is that we will need to focus on hydro, we will need to focus on nuclear. I don't use the word base power anymore. And I've had a huge amount of discussions, particularly with colleagues from the nuclear industry, because solar and wind and battery can provide me base power. So the key issue is the management at the load dispatch center, that they keep sending me electricity. It doesn't matter where it is coming from. So what we are looking at is that in the whole mix, we have got adequate amount of nuclear energy and hydro energy, and we have adequate amount of solar and wind and battery. If you have all of these combined, then the load dispatch center can match the needs. You know, all of us have needs. You know, sometimes you switch something on, sometimes you switch something off. and so on. So it has the capability of meeting those volatile needs in a manner that is, for us users, it is invisible as to how they do it. So Karnataka is the best place, and I would strongly recommend any power engineering student to go to the Karnataka State Load Dispatch Center, because they now get approximately, if I'm not wrong, 1,000 megawatts. It means 1 gigawatt of electricity from solar and wind on a regular basis, 24 hours a day. If it doesn't come from sun, you get it from wind, and vice versa. So the load centers there are extremely well trained in being able to manage these loads. In fact, we have brought people over from West Africa, from East Africa, and we are bringing a group from the Eastern Latin American countries to be able to see how the load management can provide this kind of balancing actions that you spoke about. You had, so yes, we need to focus a lot more on nuclear and hydro. I mean, there's no questions about that. I think as a country we have been criminal in not pushing this faster than we could. There was a question about using CSP. Now, this is a particularly difficult question to answer at this time. Why? Because we have not seen the kinds of declines in costs in CSP as we have seen in solar PV and batteries. Now, whether it is a matter of scale, I don't know. What I think we should do is have a CSP program that, you see, today, CSP without storage costs about 6 rupees a unit, and with storage costs about 10 rupees a unit. I think we can focus on having at least 2 or 3 plants to see if the prices decline. At the Solar Alliance, we are right now working on these economics and will make them available to the public in approximately 3 to 4 months. So what we're trying to do is get the price of the new solar plants, including the ones being set up in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, to be able to get an idea of how scaling can bring down the price of electricity from CSP. But right now, it's not looked as a part of the game because the prices are much more expensive. You also asked about hazards. In my view, there are 2 hazards. The first is the takeover of land. And that is why I am most insistent in calling for policies for land to be made available for solar. Because the person who owns the land cannot be a loser. He or she has to get at least the same amount of money, if not more, than they get from selling their agricultural produce. We are also looking at ways in which both agriculture and solar can be done simultaneously, what is known as agrivoltaics. The problem there is I'm not very sure of what can grow under different conditions, different agroclimatic conditions. What may grow in Bengal may be different from what can grow in Rajasthan. What crops? So I want more information on this. There are 10 pilot projects going on in different parts of the country to see what crops can grow and what would be their yield below and without the PV on top. The second, which is a more insidious problem, is that of end of life. What happens to the solar and batteries at the end of life? I'll tell you what my problem is. And I'm sharing this with you because there is no answer. And the answer will come out from places like Jadavpur. The solar technologies of today are very different from the solar technologies of 25 years ago. So the waste that we are producing cannot be used as it is in the new solar cells. Similarly, the solar cells that will be made 25 years from now will be very different from the solar cells that they are made today. This makes recycling technologies difficult. Yes, we are recycling glass 100%. It's crushed and goes to make new glass. Yes, we are recycling the back panels, the aluminum or steel in the back 100%. It goes into making new material. But the solar cell itself, we are not able to separate out all the layers of materials, and those layers of materials are only increasing as time goes by. In other words, we need to have standards now on I'm coining a word, don't take me seriously on this, on dismantleability. We need to be able to take out all the material layers from a solar cell. It's only if you take them out that the material can be reused. So I think we need to focus beyond the materials such as gold and silver and copper, and focus on things like the materials like silicon, or the silicon semiconductor layers that go, or in the future the perovskite layers that will go. We don't know. This is something which I don't know. Maybe if we see, if it's not used here, it will be used somewhere else. If it's not used in a solar cell, then the material can be used in other applications. That's what I don't want it to become. This has an implication on the recycling technology that we produce. So whether we are able to bring in standards quickly enough will influence the recycling technology of tomorrow. So what I'm sharing with you is essentially work in progress or thoughts in progress. India has right now brought all solar waste under the purview of the electronic wastes, in which the producer pays principal, and the fact that at the end of life you have to collect it all is there. But the problem is that here you have 25 years life, companies may not even exist 25 years later, so you need to make the collection upfront rather than later. But as I said, this is work in progress. There is limited answers that are possible. The final question was regarding the potential of solar in airports and trains. The frank answer is I don't know. Okay, lithium. Lithium is a good question. Okay, first of all, we are using lithium only for making batteries, not as a regular source of energy. So the total amount of cost is far less than in importing oil. That's number one. Number two, we are all engineers in this room, or at least largely engineers. When something becomes a problem, what happens? There are three things that happen. The first is that the higher costs drive us to do more exploration. So, for example, in this country, we did an exploration of various parts of the country, including Jammu and Kashmir, where we found bauxite. Now, when we went back to dig for bauxite, we also found lithium there. Now, lithium has come onto the list of critical minerals. So suddenly you find lithium there and you're going to extract it. So that's the first thing that happens. We are also finding it in Rajasthan and so on. The second thing that happens is that because of competitive pressures, you see that the amount of lithium used keeps declining. So a lithium battery today uses approximately 12% less lithium than it did 10 years ago. And the third thing that happens is that if the costs become too high, then you look for not of a kind substitutes. So for example, we are looking at sodium batteries. Sodium is much more easily available than lithium is. And there is one car company, a subsidiary of Volkswagen, which is providing sodium ion batteries as a standard feature instead of lithium ion batteries. So my belief is that these three engineering principles would help us in the future as far as lithium is concerned as well. I'll again answer the airports and train question by saying I really don't know. Airports, we are working with airports to see, you had Kochi Airport, you have Delhi Airport, where 100% of the electricity that they use is green electricity. They use solar during the day. They don't have batteries, but what they do is they get hydroelectricity during the night. My view is that given the amount of land that is available on airports, it is possible to solarize them, at least to use all their own for their own consumption. Whether we do it for extra or not, I don't know. It's something that is yet to be investigated. And as far as trains is concerned, I again don't know whether the train tops are good enough or whether you will need a new technology which also places solar on the sides so that the total surface area can be improved. This could also be used in buildings, for example. But those are again issues on which I do not have very clear answers or very clear thinking actually at this time.
So thank you very much for your next presentation regarding the problem related to the renewable energy systems to transform from conventional or fossil-based energy to the renewable energy systems. So my concern is you are talking about the battery systems, and we know the battery has its problems of already mentions the replacements of the batteries on regular basis because life of the batteries is very low compared to the plant life. So what about the green hydrogen? What is the facilities? What will be the cost if we replace the battery instead of replace the battery by green hydrogen system by using electrolyzer or fuel cells, etc. And what's the status of government of India? What they are doing for? So,
okay. There's one more question there, right in the middle.
Thank you, sir, for your nice presentation, Gandela. So I have some questions regarding the policy perspective from the eastern region, so where a lot of amount of coal is there. So we have studied, okay, it's obvious that LCOE of the solar is less, but if we take into the picture the jobs, so if we convert into from the thermal to solar, so the plenty of job loss will happen. So so can I, what is the planning of the government? So regarding that, this is the first question. And second question is, so okay, in some region, you have already pointed out Gujarat, Rajasthan, Karnataka, the solar potential is high, solar installation. Now, so is it beneficial from this? I'm again talking about the eastern part of the India. So to set up the power plant here, or should we just generate power from the other area and take it to transmission? So these are my two questions.
Thank you. Let me try to answer these two questions. First of all, with lithium batteries, the experience is that the changeover occurs in 7 years as opposed to the lead acid batteries, where the changeover occurs in 2 years or 3 years if they are good batteries. So you're looking at least 3 replacements during the lifetime of the solar cum renewable system. This is included in the pricing that is done for electricity production. So essentially what people are saying is that in 7 years, I would have repaid my first debt. After that, I replace my batteries and use lithium-ion batteries, new lithium-ion batteries, and pay them back for another 7 years, the price of electricity remains the same or actually reduces. And then I do it again, and the same thing happens, the price of electricity remains the same. So the point that I want to make is that with lithium batteries having achieved 7-year life, we are at a situation where we can look at these electricity prices as the standard prices, even with battery replacements. But over a period of time, the price of batteries will decrease, the life of batteries will increase, and therefore we will all be better off than we are now. Uh, as far as green hydrogen is concerned, my own feel this is a very small part of the overall price of green hydrogen. The green hydrogen price right now is about $4.5 per kg. The price of a ton of hydrogen, the price of a kg of hydrogen made from gas is about $2 per kg. So $2 and $4.5. It's a huge difference. I think first we need to bridge that and then worry about the issue of the price of green electricity. The issue of East India. The issue of East India, and please pardon me for saying this, but coal miners are badly exploited in this region. They are poorly paid, they are poorly educated, and we have an entire sector which is able to work. We are able to produce cheap coal because we have got cheap, expendable workers. We did a study of the Madhya Pradesh region where coal mines had been closed because of exhaustion, not because of any other reason. We found that in those regions, there was a mono economy of coal. The guys who had come into the coal mining, their sons came into coal mining, they forgot all about agriculture. When the coal mines moved out, they had nothing else to do. Those tehsils are in bad shape right now. I do not want that to happen here. The key issue is skills. A megawatt of solar produces about 3 times as many jobs as a megawatt of coal, except it's in different places. Here in coal, you produce the largest number of jobs in the mining of coal. In solar, you have the maximum of jobs in setting up the solar power plants or the products that use solar electricity. So, for example, if you use a solar pump or a solar cold storage or a solar mini grid, those get far more jobs, but they need greater skills. I am the proud owner of a solar pump in central UP where I have a little farm. That solar pump has not given any problem for the last 10 or 12 years. But whenever for servicing I've needed people, I couldn't ask the local village electrician to do it. He's a screwdriver chop person. He uses a screwdriver to check connectivity. With solar, you need to check whether it's AC or DC. It's time of the day, it tells you whether it's more current or higher voltage, depending on the kind of system that you have. None of these guys had multimeters. I had to get a person from Lucknow. It means 1,000 rupees to bring them and take them back to be able to check whether the pump was operating okay or not. It is these kinds of skills that we need in India. There is a green skills mission, which is looking at creating these skills and giving a certificate at the end of it so that the person can be employed. But the numbers that we need are nowhere near what the numbers we are producing are nowhere near what is needed. So I think Eastern India has a bright future if it invests in green skills. I'd love a glass of water. Okay. That's okay. I thank you very much, but I enjoy the interaction part far more.
We are happy that also Chakravarti Shivaji has also reached. So he may tell something after.
I'm truly honored by your presence, especially after you had such a family emergency. Many, many, many thanks.
What is my query is whenever you are comparing the fossil fuel system's cost vis-a-vis the renewable cost, then obviously fossil fuel system's cost is majority, as you mentioned, that the operating cost is the fuel cost and the running cost, running cost is the investment cost. But with the renewable, the uncertainty lies on the availability of natural resources. So this uncertainty is how do you take care of in comparing these two as an average value?
Well, there are two answers to it. The first answer is that the production capacity for solar cells in China alone is approximately double of what the world's need is right now. So if you are in India, you get solar cells round the year at very low prices. We did a back of envelope calculation, and China is relatively opaque as far as numbers are concerned. But we came to the conclusion that it costs them about 20 rupees to make 1 watt worth of solar panels. But they have been quoting time and again at 10 rupees a watt. In one particular instance, they even quoted 6 rupees a watt. So India is not that much of a problem. India is pretty close to China. But the problem occurs if you've got 85% of the solar panel concentration, manufacturing concentration in China. The problem occurs in the supply chain. So the ships that come from Shanghai to various parts of the world, that's where the problem lies. So every year, for 2 or 3 months of the year, you don't find any solar panels in Africa. They bypass them and go to Europe, they go to the US, or they go to Latin America, where people have more buying power. So this comes to the second part of the question. If we are going to see a 3 to 8% increase in the demand for solar panels by 2030, three times is if we follow our pledges which we give at COP, and 8 times is if the electric vehicles and green hydrogen plans also come about, then geographical diversification is essential. So we did an assessment of the costs of diversification. The first cost is that of solar cells to solar modules. So if you import solar cells and make solar modules, it gives local jobs. It gives the certainty of local supply, and the costs are competitive. This can happen almost everywhere if you have adequate demand. We are seeing this now happening in Nigeria. It always happened in Brazil and India and so on, but you're seeing it happening in countries where it didn't happen earlier. The second problem is creating the solar cells. This is where the problem of the very low cost at which the Chinese companies are selling becomes a problem. So you need an incentive to be able to meet that low cost. The US provided that incentive through the Inflation Reduction Act. And by the way, I don't think that Inflation Reduction Act will go away even if President Trump has won. You've got the performance-linked incentives in India. And together, these would help in creating a geographically diversified solar cell industry. Then companies for example, going from solar cells to solar modules in China, in Africa, will import from India because India is closer. So I'm sorry that this is not an easy answer, but it is seeming the way ahead.
You haven't talked about anything, the distributed generation renewables, because they are the transmission lines that are required.
Okay. I'm sorry that I didn't focus on it because I had a limited amount of time. I believe that distributed solar will have a far, far greater impact than large scale solar will. No, not will. It is happening a far greater impact than large scale solar is because it affects our lives. The solar panel on your roof, you live with solar power. The solar pump, I live with it. A solar mini grid system which provides solar electricity to add to the reliability of the grid, or if I don't have access to grid as in many countries in Africa, then at least I've got some electricity. Solar cold storage, which allows me to keep my agricultural produce in the cold storage. You know, in this country, only 30% of the cold storages are actually in agricultural areas. 70% are in peri-urban areas because they didn't get enough electricity. Solar allows this to be transcended. The startups that we were talking about, we have largely focused on small scale startups, not 100%, but largely on small scale startups, because we believe that's where it will make a difference to your life and mine. We also believe that investment in solar, in small solar, is not happening as much as it should. So we have created, the Solar Alliance has created a global solar facility which includes a guarantee program to guarantee investments that are made in small solar in Africa. We are hoping that this creates the global solar facility and the guarantee program creates a supply of money, and the solar startups produce the pipeline of small projects, and together they can make the change that we look forward to.
We can be hopeful about it.
Absolutely. So one of my colleagues, Lord Turner, who used to co-chair the Energy Transitions Commission with me, often says solar is inevitable. And I can't agree more with him.
I have almost finished, so just one question.
Yeah.
What is your opinion about the future material of solar cells? People say gallium compounds, various compounds of gallium have very strong possibility for the future when nobody will use silicon.
Gallium-based films have the advantage of lower cost, but also lower efficiency. So you need more area. In terms, so right now the two are photovoltaics based on silicon and photovoltaics based on various thin films, including gallium nitride. They are competing. We have one plant in India set up by First Solar near Chennai, which is producing thin film gallium nitride based, or actually it's not gallium nitride, it's cadmium telluride based films as we speak. In the future, we are seeing developments on both sides. We are seeing perovskite based PV cells. So you've got a perovskite layer and then you've got a silicon layer on top of it. And there are multiple junctions, which is leading to efficiencies of 30% plus instead of the 22% efficiencies for solar cells that we have today. We are also seeing the cadmium telluride move to gallium nitride, which is looking at efficiencies increasing from 15% to 18%. But again, we will see a market in which both thin films and the monocrystalline cells will continue to occur.
Anybody else? Any other questions? No, if not, sir, in presence of two of the former residents of the Bengal chamber, and I know both of them are very affectionate to me, I must admit we could interact more in here rather than the chambers program. Because there are so many speakers, so many crowd, and we cannot just interact so nicely. And we are very happy that you have answered all these questions with your smile, with your suggestions. Now, I would request Professor Shivaji Chakraborty, because he missed the initial inaugural part, so maybe he has some words for you and all of us. And go to the stage. Hey, go ahead and chat and come down. And you can go to the
Good evening. Good evening. I'm very sorry that at the outset of the meeting I was not present. There were certain very pressing reasons for that. I'm not going to elaborate on that, but I was trying to come, so I'm happy that I could make it in the end. First of all, it's a great privilege to have Dr. Ajay Mathur amongst us. We were trying to get him for quite a long time, and once it was all settled, but again it was on the other side. On his side, there was something very pressing happened, and the thing got cancelled at the last moment. And from that day onward, we were trying that we'll find some suitable date when he could come. So finally, it happened. And I am also happy to say that we have the collaboration of very eminent people like Mr. Mukherjee. I mean, both are Mukherjees, Mr. Dev Mukherjee as well as Mr. Alok Mukherjee. Uh, thanks to both of you for making this happen. I don't want to say many things. The first thing I would like to say that WAST, that is the West Bengal Academy of Science and Technology, organizes these programs not for the WAST members or WAST fellows. We organize programs for others, for students, for research scholars, or for faculty members of different institutions. So it's not important that how many WAST fellows. I think in this hall we have maximum 3 to 4. So that's not the important part. Important part is the participation of the others. And by that, I try to, particularly in this year, this is the 9th program we are organizing from April onwards. We are trying to reach out to people and tell what we do. And particularly when we have such people coming to WAST platform, the reach of WAST goes far away, because we are also providing this live on YouTube. Not only that, it will be archived. I hope you won't mind if we archive it. So we'll archive it so that it will be on our that YouTube channel. Anybody can watch at any time. We'll publicize it through our channel. So that is another opportunity we take when such speakers come to WAST. Second thing is, see, when such speakers come and speak, we are not bothered about the quantity. We don't want to fill up this hall with people sitting here and then watching their mobiles or maybe talking to each other. We want people who want to listen to Dr. Mathur or speakers like his stature. So it is not the quantity that matters, but the quality that matters. And I could already see that the questions that were coming and the questions which were already there, but probably due to paucity of time could not be asked, that actually indicates that how involved you were. So it's not important that you are 50 of you and not 150 of you, but the quality, that is very important to us. And finally, a special thanks to Dr. Mathur so that you could make it finally to us. And I hope that it will not be the last visit of yours. Definitely we'll find opportunities. And if not for the academy or maybe some other platform, we'll find opportunities to have you amongst us. Thank you very much. And once again, on behalf of the academy, I thank all the research scholars, students, faculty members, and the other very eminent person who have graced this particular lecture session to make it a very engrossing one. Thank you very much, Jai Hind.
Okay, so we come to the end of this wonderful lecture series. We'd like there's